Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Grilling JR with the voice of professional wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
I'm good, buddy. I'm good. How you doing?
Man, better than I deserve. Excited to be on here talking with you today. Of course, we're going to be talking about WrestleMania 15. It's WrestleMania season, of course, for a lot of wrestling fans. And man, they're back in Philadelphia 25 years later. So that's what we're doing. We're going way back to WrestleMania 15 in Philadelphia. It was a interesting time in the World Wrestling Federation. The Russo era, we were knee deep, but boy, the business was hotter than ever here. When I first say WrestleMania 15 to you, is there anything that you immediately think of or that springs to mind?
I think it's Austin's coming out party. Nothing's going to superimpose that. I don't think. It's just WrestleMania has a pulse of its own, has its own personality, all that stuff, which we'll talk about. But Philly was on fire, and they were ready for what they were about to see.
I can't wait to talk about WrestleMania 15. I want to remind everybody that if you haven't already, JR's book is right around the corner, and you can pre-order right now. I encourage you to check out jrbook50.com. The name of the book is Business is About to Pick Up. It's chronicling JR's 50 years in the wrestling business. How about that? 50 years in the wrestling business, Jim.
Yeah. What have I been doing all this time? Where'd the time go, by golly? So, yeah, it's a labor of love. It's probably the last book I'm going to write. Hope folks take advantage of that fact. I think the book's going to be available in May to everybody. But as Conrad said, you can order it now, and that'll work out pretty good. I've got some appearances coming up where I'm going to do my best to take some books, have books with me to sell and sign. So we'll see how it works out. I really like the concept of the book. Paul O'Brien and I thought did a nice job on putting it all together. I wanted something that was not an everlasting read,
right?
Quick stories and all that stuff. So I think we accomplished that, and we didn't have any problem coming up with 50 stories. I mean, it was just there, and I could have probably done 50 more. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's just sell this one and see how it goes. But I think people are going to like it.
I know they will. I enjoyed it. I know Dave Silva enjoyed it. We both got little preview copies. Encourage you to pre-order yours now. jrbook50.com. Business is about to pick up. And boy, business has been picking up here in 1999. That's what we're talking about. But when I think of WrestleMania 15 in that era, man, there was a lot of moving parts with the Russo era, the Attitude era. We're knee deep in it. But with you specifically, they try to turn you heel. Now, I know they tried that once before, I guess 3 years prior, 1996, and you're going off about the fake Diesel and the fake Razor Ramon, and you did a great job in that promo. We've covered that in the archives over at grillingjr.com. But when this came up again in 1999, the idea that they wanted to make you an on-screen character, not quote unquote just a commentator, but now you're going to be a bad guy, a heel persona. This time, maybe being paired with your old pal, Dr. Death, where I know you didn't enjoy it in 96, but the pairing with Dr. Death, did that make it feel different, or were you still maybe not so bullish on the idea?
Maybe a little bit more pressure to make it work. I thought maybe I never felt comfortable being a heel. I would have done it if it had been done correctly, and I had been more patient, but I didn't like being a heel. I didn't like changing my role. I liked doing what I was doing, which I thought I was doing pretty decent. It had been for quite some time. So here we are 50 years later from starting this crazy profession, and I'm still not a heel. It just wasn't meant to be, in my opinion. And that might just be my ego talking.
Here's what you wrote in your book. In addition to my existing administrative duties, I started to help produce the announcing on Raw each Monday. I could feel the energy from the crowd through the curtain, but I didn't want to go out there. I was afraid of being mocked. That curtain became my safety net. I could stay on one side of it and kind of make myself forget that I looked the way I did. If I walked the other side, the other world or the whole wide world would see. Even the thought of going out there before people made my stomach turn. Michael Cole was my replacement, and even though he was newish and green, I could tell that he was going to be a hell of a talent in that position. In my mind, I was finished with the announcer section of my career. So, of course, you're still happily employed and gainfully employed by WWE in this era. But after suffering that bout of Bell's palsy, and maybe there's a question as to whether or not, you're going to return to commentary, were you comfortable with that idea of, running talent relations and working behind the scenes? Or, I mean, you wrote here, you thought it was over. Can you take us through that?
Well, I just thought that Vince had made his mind up. He tried more than once to replace me. And so what options do I have, Conrad? You're a very smart, astute businessman. If your boss says, here's what I want you to do, then how do you not do that?
Right.
It's common sense. So I was just going to write it out and see where it took us, because this particular journey had plenty of twists and turns in it. And I was willing to, let's just write it out and see where it takes us. And, we're doing a lot of TV. I thought my work was going to hold up with anybody else on the roster, or at least that was my take on it. And but it was a little unsettling, to say the least. It's hard to walk away without ample explanation. And I just felt like that, for whatever reason, Vince wanted to upgrade. I sounded Southern. I looked bad with the Bell's palsy. And it kind of was kicking my ass psychologically. So the only thing I knew to do, because I couldn't change his mind, was to wait and see what happens. And that's what we did. And it seemed like it worked out okay by and large.
You wrote in your book about Michael Cole that he was newish and green, or new and greenish, whatever the phrase was. But the reality is, behind the scenes, there was a lot of wrestling fans who believed for years that there was some animosity between you two guys. And I don't know if that was ever real, but a lot of times when you see like a starting quarterback and then his backup quarterback, fans at home just want to buy into the fact that there's some sort of contention between them. Chat me up about your relationship with Michael Cole then and now.
Always very respectful. I always liked Michael. Michael's wife had some health issues, and so I was set in for him from time to time. I think that showed Vince I hadn't lost my timing and my passion. But Michael and I don't know that we ever had any significant bad words with each other. Nice guy. Dad's a cop, highway patrolman in Jersey. He's a good guy. I liked Michael a lot. Still do. I don't talk to him. Occasionally on the holidays, perhaps, or a birthday or some special occasion, I will drop him a text. He always responds. He's always polite. So he's a good guy. And he's had a wonderful career there. He's pretty well replaced good old JR as the voice of WWE. And I took a lot of pride in that title, unofficial title. I took a lot of pride in that deal. So, but Michael he's a class guy, a little nerdy sometimes, but good guy. I'm glad I got to work with him, and I'm glad he's doing well. I'm proud of him.
Absolutely. He's done a great job. And I don't think a lot of people maybe would have predicted this longevity or this success, because he was stepping into really big shoes. And whenever we talk about that quarterback example, I always think about when they had to phase out Joe Montana, when the 49ers decided we're going with Steve Young, Montana's no longer our guy. Man, a lot of football fans, even 49er fans, they weren't sold on that. I mean, Joe was the proven guy. But it's not like it was Joe's fault. This is what management wanted. They're going to run the play, right?
And Joe landed on his feet, went to Kansas City, and played some good football. So you just never know.
That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Doesn't that sound familiar?
Pretty much. Just don't give up. Yes. I never gave up on my journey to get back to my seat in the middle of that announce table. I was always confident that things were going to work out, and maybe that's one of my lasting assets is that I just refused to give up and tap. There was no tapping for JR on that scenario. I just had to wait and see if my opportunity was going to arise again. And luckily for me, in going forward, it did happen. And, you know, so that's kind of how I looked at that, Conrad. I just wanted to be productive and I wanted to be back in the game. I wanted to play. I didn't want to walk around with a clipboard in my hands, using that quarterback analogy. I wanted to play, get me on the field. So that's kind of where I was on that thing. I just never gave up.
Well, the WWE did not give up either. They're coming off two really hot pay-per-views, the Royal Rumble and St. Valentine's Day Massacre. I can't believe this is a real thing, but the main event of St. Valentine's Day Massacre is Vince versus Stone Cold. And that's where we would, of course, see the debut of Paul White, who would eventually become known as the Big Show.
Right.
But the idea that we're seeing Vince versus Austin on a pay-per-view, I don't think I would have predicted that just a year prior.
I was happy with that booking. I thought it was, you know, you got your top heel, the guy that's carrying the most heat, the individual that people want to see get his ass kicked more than anybody else on the roster, and you're pairing him up with your it guy. Steve was getting hotter and hotter, and he had this personal issue with Vince. So the booking made sense. Now, was it going to be an artistic success? Was it going to be WrestleMania 13 with Brett and Steve? No, never had a chance to do that. I don't think they believed that. I think they just wanted to go out and have a dog and pony show and kicks and punches and a little juice and so forth. But it worked for me. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed calling it because the match had so much drama attached to it, and natural, organic drama.
Yeah, fans were really invested in this story. I mean, clearly the biggest story in company history. The Rock and Mankind are having a really high-profile feud as well. It's going to end the night after the pay-per-view in Memphis when The Rock defeats Mankind with Paul White's help in a ladder match. He wins the WWF title to set the stage for WrestleMania. And there was just an incredible series of matches between those two. I know that when people think about The Rock's most high-profile feud, they almost always go right to Austin, and I understand that. But before that happened on a really big level, call it 15, 17, 19, the feud with Mankind, at least to me, really put The Rock on the map.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Because Mick was established. He was a recognized global star. He was unusual, unique, and I thought he brought the best out in The Rock. And to The Rock's credit, being a green guy, he didn't miss a beat. He didn't miss a beat because Dwayne's always been real smart. I talked about that before here. You know, he had a great way of forecasting. He had a great way of asking the right questions. So yeah, it was good, man. It was I was very happy with that match and that program. It helped Rock immensely. So maybe Mick doesn't get the credit that he deserves, but in any event, it was a key cog in developing Dwayne Johnson.
No doubt about it. He said over the years, by the way, he being Mick Foley, that he thought the original plan for WrestleMania 15 was supposed to be a three-way, which would have been a now babyface Mick Foley and a babyface, of course, Stone Cold Steve Austin and a heel Rock. And ultimately, Mick believes Shawn Michaels maybe got in the ear of Vince McMahon and had it changed because he felt like WrestleMania, the poster, if you will, should be mano a mano. It should be one-on-one.
A lot of guys believe that, Conrad. I happen to believe that too, as a matter of fact. Not that I anti-triple threat matches, because I'm the first guy that ever booked a significant amount of triple threat matches in the WWE territory back in the day. But I agree with that. I think that poster means a lot, and I think that it's just makes common sense. You know, we should have enough expertise booking and matchmaking to come up with a one-on-one match that we could all enjoy and not be convoluted, not have too many cooks in the kitchen, shall we say. And anyway, it was all good, man. That was a good time for me as an announcer because the angles were so real and they're based in realness. So I was I was really happy with how the booking was rolled along there. Whoever was contributing the most should get credit for it. But it was fun. It was fun to call.
It was fun to watch too. It is interesting to think how the views have changed on WrestleMania over the years, though. I mean, here we are in '99 saying, "Hey, we really can't have a multi-person main event." And
Right.
then 1 year later, we have a four-way with a McMahon in every corner.
Right.
And even the guy who allegedly says, "Hey, it can't be a multi-man match," Shawn Michaels says that in '99. Fast forward to 2004, he becomes the third man in the main event in a
Yeah.
three-way at WrestleMania 20. So, things change. That's just the way it is in professional wrestling. And
It's like casting a movie. It's like casting a sitcom or a TV show. You want the right chemistry. You want the right pieces to put into that dish. It's like making soup, Conrad. To me, the best soups are homemade, and they have multiple ingredients. They're cooked slow. They're allowed to develop, and I think we've made some good soup with that deal.
we've also got Shane McMahon doing a little in-ring wrestling here. I mean, we've seen him have skirmishes and some fights here and there, and certainly some tag matches. He's actually going to win the European title here. I know that he did all sorts of crazy stunts, and he was really, thrown to the wolves here at times. Maybe, we're testing his metal. I'm not really sure. Did you get any feedback from the talent about Shane McMahon, quote unquote, taking up TV time away
No,
from the other traditional wrestlers?
no, not really, Conrad. Not really. And one of the reasons for that is that everybody saw that Shane's heart was in the right place.
Yeah.
He really wanted to do this to contribute to the company's success, and talents that had any common sense could see that was what was happening. So, no, I didn't have any issues with it. If he had been arrogant and conceited and just a miserable prick to be around, different reaction. But Shane was at least in my memory, was very well liked, and he was just he wanted to be one of the boys. He worked hard to be one of the boys, and the boys saw that, and they embraced the concept.
Dave Meltzer in The Observer had this to say about Shane. Shane as a character is way too similar to that of Eric Bischoff. Vince is a super performer, not that he doesn't get out of control at times. Shane is a good performer doing heel interviews, but he oversteps and does so much of what he's not good at as well. And due to that, he comes across as the boss using the TV as his ego tool. Man, I understand we're playing conspiracy theorists there, but that sounds like that is 180 degrees different than what your take was.
Yeah, well, Meltzer had his opinion, and I respect anybody's opinion. Whether I agree with them or not is irrelevant. But I don't agree with that assessment. I do look. The kid Shane was very inexperienced. He was. If Shane had a fault, it might be the fact that he didn't have as much in-ring product knowledge as he would like for many to believe. And God knows we have plenty of brilliant minds around there that can contribute and help him. And he's an athletic kid. He's fearless, and he was having the time of his life. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Let's talk about Paul White. We mentioned St. Valentine's Day Massacre earlier, that big headlining match with Vince McMahon and Stone Cold. That's where Paul White makes his debut. And it does feel like the first few months, we're off to a bit of a rough start where we're just calling him Paul White. It doesn't feel like, I don't know. What was your impression, your first impression of working with Paul White? We'll say the first several months in WWE. Did it feel like a fit for you?
Yeah, I felt pretty good. I had a little bit of experience with Paul White. He played junior college basketball at Northern Junior College in Tonkawa, Oklahoma, 2-year school. And then the deal was set up, I believe, if I recall correctly, that he was going to go from there to his predetermined destination of Wichita State and play hoops. So we had that in common. His coach at Northern Junior College was an old friend of mine. So I had a little insider information on him. and I used it to help establish a relationship. Because Paul White's not any different than anybody else in wrestling. He's going to have some issues where he's going to be, you know, insecure, especially when you know that you're this massive body that, you know, he started from scratch. He was athletic enough and he had the aptitude and he listened to others, which was good. But I thought, I didn't think we got out of the box overtly strong with him, to be honest with you.
Bart Gunn is also going to be coming back into the company, and having won Brawl for All, you would think that there would be some big plans around the same time. We're going to see he runs across Butterbean in the crowd. I know how this worked out, but at least once upon a time, boy, it felt like there were plans for Bart Gunn. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Good looking guy, reliable, professional, athletic. Why would there not be? You know, the thing that Bart had to address was his ability to connect with the audience and in the charisma area. But as far as mechanics and look, attitude, he had all those things. But unfortunately, Vince did not agree with that assessment, and so he didn't put any confidence in Bart, and that story ended almost abruptly as it started.
Let's talk about Sable here. She's been one of the hottest merch movers for a couple of years. She's getting huge pops. She is a huge star. I mean, she's been on the cover of Playboy. She's been on TV Guide. I mean, she is a really, really big star, but we're turning her heel. Talk to me about the Sable heel turn. Were you in favor of that? Did that make sense?
I think it was a heel turn, Conrad, excuse me, for the sake of a change.
Okay.
I didn't think it was well thought out. There's no reason to turn her heel. It's just somebody's impatience, maybe Vince or somebody else in the creative. She didn't need to have her TV persona altered. She's over. She was selling merchandise. Why would you even take a chance to allow that to happen? So I didn't agree with that one. But you're right about several of those points you made. She was a huge star.
Yeah.
She evolved into becoming a major star. And if you know philosophically, how do you determine that, JR? Well, I saw the merchandise numbers daily. I know how much she was going to earn on her royalty checks that came out every quarter. So she was she didn't need tweaking at that point in time, in my view. I thought it was very premature.
Let's talk about Scorpio. We knew him here as Flash Funk, but you know, once upon a time, you worked with him in WCW as Too Cold Scorpio, and of course, that's what he was known in ECW. But he's going to get released here, and Meltzer would say he's been in and out of hot water since he started with the company. At the '97 WrestleMania, he had a domestic dispute at the hotel, which resulted in the police being called, and it was something of a black eye for the company since everyone in their families comes to WrestleMania.
Yeah.
He was a major letdown, and when he missed the show with no valid reason in Colorado Springs a few weeks back, it was no surprise he was let go. I know that you've always sort of championed how important reliability was
Yeah.
in the company. Was that really the issue, and do you remember this conversation and circumstance?
Well, Vince just lost confidence in him. Some of the behavior, it wasn't that Charles, aka Too Cold Scorpio, was a bad guy or a wife beater, but he had enough issues to put on his report card that it made him very vulnerable. I felt badly about that because you know, I didn't think that Scorpio was going to be a close the show main event guy, but you know, I could have been wrong on that, but I liked the guy. He was unique. He was different. He always kept changing his game. He was doing things that are now normal. He was doing things then that were abnormal, and that only he could execute with the level of skill that he was doing. So it was unfortunate. I still like Charles. I think he's a good guy and hell of an athlete. So it's just one of those things, man. You know, one or two little mistakes that fall in front of the eyes of the chairman doesn't do you any favors.
Let's talk a little bit about where you are in the Monday Night Wars. On February 15th, Raw sets an all-time viewership record at that point, 6,492,000 viewers. Meanwhile, Nitro only draws 3,851,000 viewers. So 6.4 to 3.8, nearly double. I mean, it's crazy. You guys have just dominated. Meltzer would call it the biggest whitewash in the history of the Monday Night Wars. And maybe in retaliation to that, a few days later, in response to these low ratings, Goldberg's on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
Yeah.
And he issues a challenge to Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's not something we saw very often in this era. Were you surprised to see Goldberg call out Austin on the Tonight Show?
Yeah, a little bit. I thought it was one of those, please notice me. We're trying to create some interest here, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I was a little surprised. It seemed desperate. It didn't seem natural. And I know that Bill and Steve were friends, so there wasn't any personal heat there. It was a matter, I'm sure, that Bill got instructed, here's what I want you to do. And, Eric could answer that better than me, obviously. But there was no heat between the two guys on a personal level. But hey, obviously, if that match could have happened somewhere down the road, it would be a moneymaker. But that was never to be. As long as the day that Goldberg signed with us is when we can start keeping score. Now the challenges mean something. Heretofore, they meant nothing. Just a publicity stunt.
Well, the WWF, of course, is not going to respond to this. And the only time we get any response at all is when Stone Cold goes on Howard Stern's radio show. Howard brings it up, and Austin says something like, Goldberg was wrestling in the minor leagues. Obviously, that would have been gigantic had they hooked up in, we'll say, the summer of 98. But by 99, boy, Goldberg and WCW were sucking hind teat, as they say in the South.
Yes, sir.
Terry Taylor is a guy we haven't talked about a lot here on the show, but man, he was back and forth between the WWF and WCW here. He's going to come back to the WWF in this era. He's even going to be working as an announcer on Sunday Night Heat. What can you tell us about Terry Taylor's on again, off again stints with the company?
Well, he's a smart guy, talented guy. No doubt about that. He's a veteran, student of the game. So he was just trying to make a living. Him announcing and replacing JR or whatever, he just one of many that came through that with that same goal in mind, as he was instructed to do by his owner, and that's was to, I want you to be a star in JR's old role. So it just didn't quite work out for Terry. His skill set is more akin to putting matches together, coaching, mentoring, and I think that's been proven out by his long stay at NXT. So that's kind of where I see that deal. He was just miscast.
Yes,
and you see that a lot in wrestling. This guy's the heel. No, he really should be a baby face. Whatever. There's a million ways. He's in a tag. We want him to get him out of the tag. But if the tags are working, and you just want to make a change for change's sake, you might be traveling the wrong road. And I think that we traveled the wrong road with Terry. Terry added a lot to the shows, and he still adds a lot to the product that they have. But he was that was not what he was prepared to do. All the years in wrestling did not prepare him to be an announcer.
Let's talk a little bit about Public Enemy and whether or not they were prepared. They're going to debut and beat Gangrel and Edge in 1 minute and 24 seconds when Christian interferes. Meltzer would say, boy, it didn't take long for PE to look bad. They don't take bumps. Grunge has put on even more weight, and they both looked real slow. They got no reaction. The lights went out, and they were covered with blood. We know that they're not long for this world, and after the Acolyte match, that's probably all she wrote, but You know, these guys were a super overact once upon a time in ECW. I guess it was worth a shot. What do you make of Meltzer's assessment that they just look slow and perhaps Grunge had just put on too much weight?
Yeah, the train had left the station.
Yeah.
You know, they did have a good run. You know, Paulie knew how to book them and knew how to prepare them for TV, and that seemed to work out well for them. But we couldn't create that same thing. They didn't come in ready. As you alluded to, Grunge had put on significant weight that affected his athleticism, as it would anybody's. So we just got him too late. And that's not unusual. That's happened. There's a lot of illustrations that we could probably, if we dug it up, could fit that bill. They just weren't prepared when they got there. It was just another territory, and it wasn't just another territory. It was a situation where if they had been focused and in shape, that they would have an opportunity to be a long-term contributor. And while on that long-term journey, they're making some pretty good money. We all liked them. I mean, they're funny guys. I think they were always kind of paranoid, and that may have just been from their ECW background. And coming into WWE was a whole different animal than working for any other company, because we had that one owner, the patriarch. You know, it was just a lot of different pressures. Does Vince like it? What does Vince say? Vince, and if they didn't have a relationship with him, then all of a sudden you feel like you're out of the loop. And I think they more often than not felt they were out of the loop.
Well, somebody who's back in the loop is Bart Gunn. Meltzer's going to report that he's back and looks like he's dropped about 35 pounds from 275 down to 240. And he looks totally different. Bud, Meltzer would say, still uncharismatic. But he does say that these tours of Japan have really improved his work. He even called the match with Bob Holly here surprisingly good. They go 8 minutes and 16 seconds. And all of a sudden, there's this silly looking character dressed up like a Japanese wrestler with this awful dime store Halloween mask that throws Bart off the ramp through a table where he's then pinned. We never really acknowledge who this person is, but the previous week on Memphis TV, there was a fellow wearing the same mask, and he said he'd wear it until he won the WWF title. And given the way the gimmick looked, Meltzer would say he's going to be wearing it for a long time with that stipulation. This silly Japanese mask behind that is Dr. Death Steve Williams. What in the world are we doing, Jim?
I had no idea. Didn't know then, don't know now. This, in a nutshell, we were seemingly desperate to find a gimmick for Doc that fit Doc and that he could start contributing and earning his money. You know, I thought when I signed Doc, Bruce and I did a lot of work on that, getting that done, because Doc didn't have a lot of, you know, again, most of his exposure was in Japan. And so a lot of the people on staff, believe it or not, were not familiar with what was going on in Japan as far as pro wrestling was concerned, which was a mistake. You should look at all your quote unquote competition, get familiar with what they're doing, see if somebody's being booked accurately, so that if we get the chance, we can replicate that like booking and it work out better for the talent. But I like, it's just a matter of we kept looking and looking, and you know, just we never found the right formula. And I don't know, Doc just, you know, I hired Doc to have a run with Austin and call it a day.
Right.
But we never got there.
Well, we know that Jim Cornette has become a polarizing figure in modern wrestling. And whether you agree with his take on wrestling or not, he's damn entertaining. And he would have been great on TV more in this era. But the Observer says maybe that wasn't in the cards. A few weeks back, there was a suggestion to replace Shane McMahon with Jim Cornette, since he did a good job. But Cornette is in the political doghouse, particularly with Vince Russo, who writes the TV, and Kevin Dunn, who produces the show. So he's not about to get any high-profile breaks these days. Now, if you've ever heard Cornette speak for more than an hour, Russo, and Kevin Dunn probably come up. Two of his, well, let's just say not very favorite people.
Right.
Could you see the writing on the wall that, boy, Cornette is not happy, not having a good time. He's probably going to be looking to do something else pretty soon.
Yeah, at his own wishes. I think Corny was more than ready to move on.
Yeah.
He was miserable. And he's too damn talented and too smart to be miserable in a business that he was very skilled in. So now I don't know, man. I knew that the flame was burning. When it was going to ignite, most of us didn't know, but we knew something was going to change drastically as it relates to Cornette's employment in WWE.
Well, why do you think Russo and Cornette, or for that matter, Dunn and Cornette, were oil and water? Was it a anti-Southern bias or something like that, or is there something else at play?
It might have had some Southern bias in it, no doubt. Cornette thought that Russo and Kevin Dunn didn't have the product knowledge to lead and help mold a growing company that had unlimited potential, as is evidenced today, as far as their financials are concerned. But Cornette didn't like any outs. He looked at Dunn and Russo as outsiders, and they weren't. You're not welcome here. Get off my lawn, type thing. So I think that's that was it in a nutshell. They were outsiders, and Cornette didn't like it. And also he had issues with some of their booking philosophies. And to be quite honest, we did some things creatively that just didn't make any common sense.
Right.
And so when you get in a situation like that, when you ask somebody who wrote it, how do you want us to handle this? How do we present this? And they don't know. It's just change for change's sake. A big enemy within the booking realm of professional wrestling. Well, let's just change this. Okay, why? Well, because you got nothing better, and you believe it's time to make a flip the switch to something else. More likely, yes, but those are not good reasons.
Not good reasons at all. Let's talk about an episode of Raw, pretty infamous Raw, I guess. There's an Inferno match. Yeah, an Inferno match on Raw, not a pay-per-view. This is where the Undertaker and Kane are going to hook it up. Taker's going to win when Kane's boot is caught on fire. This is probably most memorably known for Taker burning Stephanie's teddy bear and giving it to Vince. At this point, you got to assume, all right, we've seen Vince, we've seen Shane, we've seen Linda. Stephanie's about to be a regular character on TV. Could you see that right away?
Yeah, she had talent.
Yeah.
I hope that we were going to use her because she's good at what she did. One of the great traits for any heel in any promotion is the ability to be disliked. The easier it is or to dislike somebody, the more ammunition you have for that person to be a villain. Villains shouldn't make you laugh. They shouldn't have you embrace them. It's just not that way. That was, speaking of Cornette, that's one of the issues he had, is where, we'd get a heel turn and all of a sudden we're writing comedy for him. And I don't, to me, that's so illogical. It's not even funny. It's talking about it's illogical. Pardon me. It's crazy, Connie. It's just really crazy how that worked out when you stop and think about it logically. And now I can say, well, things are different today. Are they? Are we just forcing? I know we have some great heels in AEW, great heels, and I'm really excited to continue to work with them. But golly, man, you can't book a heel with good thoughts in mind. They have to have several redeeming flaws. And if you can identify those flaws as a fan, you have more reason to dislike the individual as a talent. So, but that's kind of what's one of Cornette's issues, is that we're booking too many, too many. We're cross pollinating. So something's got to give. Something's not going to be living its fullest dream if you are writing comedy for heels, because personalities of a pro wrestler is going to be entertaining anyway. So you're still going to get some laughs, but they're going to be organic and they're going to be real. And to me, that's the most effective of all. So yeah, that's just philosophical stuff. And I understand there's exceptions to the rule, and JR says it when he heels laughing or whatever. I'm not saying anything other than, in general, a heel should not be the funniest guy on the roster. If he is, then keep it in the locker room.
Well, something that was the talk of the television business for a little bit, it had to be, is the idea that Monday Night Football's ratings were down. They fell 7%. It's the lowest average in a 20-plus year history of Monday Night Football. And of course, the NFL is blaming the decline on starting the games earlier and having more blowout games. Of course, nobody is acknowledging the impact of Monday Night Raw and Monday Nitro.
Yeah.
But you guys knew, right? Y'all knew.
Oh yeah. All you got to do is look at the breakdown of the demographic.
Yeah.
And if the young male demographic on our side is increasing, where's it coming from? Then turn the page and look at the hour by hour and the demographic ratings of Monday Night Football, and there's your answer. But of course, they can't go let it out there that what do you mean we got beat by wrestling? It's all about the wrestling.
Yes.
And the prejudice of against pro wrestling.
Let's talk a little bit about Paul White. We mentioned that he came into the company in February, and Meltzer would report here that this deal was actually put together way back in December of 96, or at least that's when it started. Yeah. The former Luke Williams of the Bushwhackers was sort of an intermediary to help you guys avoid tampering.
Right.
And he set up Paul White's agent, Jim Strausser, with McMahon. And as I understand it, White told McMahon that Strausser had the right to negotiate, so McMahon could then avoid contract tampering. And the sides agreed on a 10-year deal for a little under $1 million a year. And
right.
Meltzer would say, as best we can tell, the only part Hogan played in the deal was that whenever Giant was close to changing his mind, thinking maybe I'll stick around here in WCW, quote, Hogan convinced him to take McMahon's deal because McMahon could make him a bigger star. Does Dave have this right? Is that the way you remember all this going down?
Yeah, it's all true. I mean, Hogan's telling the truth. McMahon is going to make Paul White a bigger star than anybody else. And especially if Vince is committed to doing it. And Shane took a liking to Big Show. I went down there to meet with him 2 or 3 times. Big Show, I'm speaking of, and enjoyed. It's like a recruiting trip. He was living on the beach, I think in Miami. I'm not sure, somewhere in Florida. And but yeah, that's pretty much it. We had a number that we were going to live or die with, and that was $1 million downside. $19,323 a week, if memory serves me correctly. So, and we thought that was his number. Now, here's the great thing about WWE then and now. I mean, now I'm assuming now, but then because you had a downside guarantee doesn't mean you're on salary. Doesn't mean that's all you're going to make. If you're productive and the pay-per-views do good buy rates, et cetera, then you got a chance to make a whole lot more money. And I think over the long haul, Paul White had some $1 million plus years on that $1 million downside guarantee. So it was a good deal for him. And, I like I said, we didn't start out with Paul on TV as well as I wish we could have in hindsight, because you can't replicate him. And the first thing we did was overexpose him. You can't have a giant on TV. We talk about all these different references. Andre wasn't on TV every week, and nor should he have been. Back in the day, JYD wasn't in a TV match every week either in Mid-South Wrestling.
Right.
You got to be smart in how you book people and not be and not be nearsighted, shall we say. So the negotiations were pretty easy, actually. I know Shane used to bug the hell out of me on where are we with him and this, and I don't have a problem with that. But I couldn't make him sign until he was ready to sign, and that's what we did. So when the time was right, we made the official offer, and the big guy went for it. It was a good deal. I mean, what the fuck? He was making, that's a lot of money.
Oh yeah, it is.
You know,
It
almost
was a
20,
lot of money then. That's a lot of money now.
yeah, it's almost 20 G's a week. So that's a good chunk of change. I'm glad we signed Paul, but I wish we had used him better. Athletic, big guy. We had issues with his weight from time to time that we had to just talk him off the ledge on that deal. Big guys are funny when you say you want them to lose a little weight. They think they're going to go hungry, and they can't they can't stand that. So I think he thought we're going to starve him to death. But seriously, we could have got more juice, more mileage out of him if we had used him smarter and had not had him on TV every week. Looking back at it, that made no sense.
Talk to me a little bit about Luke, Bushwhacker Luke. Is that the way you remember that he was the intermediary who helped get the ball rolling back in December of '96?
I think so, yeah. And hey, he was a former booker, 30 plus years in the business. Good guy, honest guy, and his heart was in the right place. He wanted to help WWE with a talent acquisition. I, for one, who's responsible for getting Paul sign his contract, was very happy with it because the Bushwhacker could answer questions. He could spend time. He lived there in the area. It had a lot of positives. So yeah, he did. He earned his keep there. I don't know what we paid him, but I'm sure we paid him something that was decent. But a good guy, and he helped us a lot. I'm glad he was on our team.
Meltzer wrote about a distasteful segment, but before we talk about that, let's talk about the money. You talked about like 20 grand a week the Big Show was making back then, or nearly 20 grand a week.
All right.
Well, if you're not making 20 grand a week, man, saving money has never been easier than with Rocket Money. Like nearly 75% of people have subscriptions. They've forgotten about it. And I was one of them. And before I started using Rocket Money, I thought I had, 6 or 7 different subscriptions. I could not believe what Rocket Money showed me. I was paying for nearly 24 subscriptions between my wife and I, between the streaming services and fitness apps and delivery services. It was just never ending. But thanks to Rocket Money, I'm no longer wasting money on the ones I forgot about. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. With Rocket Money, you have full control over your subscriptions and a clear view of all of your expenses. You can see where all of your subscriptions are in one place. And man, if you see something you don't want, Rocket Money can help you cancel it in just a few taps. They also have a dashboard that shows you this month's spending compared to last month's.
That's a hell of a Conrad. That's a hell of a deal right there.
Yes.
That feature on their app, you know exactly where you are.
Yep.
With every product every day. And to me, that's a godsend. Great idea.
They'll even help you create a custom budget to keep that spending on track. But check this out, Jim. Rocket Money will even help you negotiate to lower your bills for you by up to 20%. All you have to do is submit a picture of your bill, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. They'll even deal with the customer service for you. In total, Rocket Money has over 5 million users, and they've saved those folks over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. We're talking saving members up to $740 a year when they're using all of the app's features. So stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions right now by going to rocketmoney.com/JR. That's rocketmoney.com/JR. rocketmoney.com/JR.
Yeah, folks, you'll have no regrets on this transaction. It's just too logical. Just think about it. Think about rocketmoney.com/JR. Take advantage and start saving a bunch of money that you're just throwing away. And none of us, no matter what we earn, can afford to throw money away. And that's what you're going to be doing if you ignore this offer. rocketmoney.com/JR. Take advantage of it and see how quickly you start saving money.
Well said. Rocketmoney.com/JR. Let's talk about one of the things I know is it's going to be a burr under your saddle. Here's what Meltzer wrote.
A burr?
Yep, here we go. Jim Ross came out for one of the most distasteful segments since the Melanie Pillman interview. He called out Bart Gunn and blamed him for his Bell's palsy, and he slapped Gunn to turn him heel. Now, there were signs everywhere welcoming him back since word was put on the internet that he'd return on this show. Then Steve Williams ran in and gave Gunn a German suplex on his head and a backdrop driver, and they put the boots to him. I don't know that this angle wasn't Ross's idea, but it came off terribly.
Yeah, not hardly.
Yeah.
Conrad, I was never creative in that respect.
Right.
That was not my, you get to TV and here's your sheets and here's what we want you to do tonight. We're going to do this piece of business with Bart. So if it was going to help Bart continue to establish his persona, I was all for it. But I'm like you. I thought the creative was weak and unnecessary. But hey, we did it, and we got pictures to show about it, T-shirts and everything. No, I'm kidding. But you know what I mean. It was just ill thought, at least in my take. And maybe that's just because my ego is too massive.
Let's I got to ask, how did you feel about them saying we want to use, we want you to blame Bart Gunn for your Bell's palsy? More importantly, how did Jan feel about that?
Uncomfortable. She was always uncomfortable with when my illness was the centerpiece of a storyline, because she knew what we'd gone through. When you when you can't suck a straw and you can't chew, a lot of little things like that, and the pain and the paralysis, it just wasn't a fun time at the Ross household. And then all of a sudden she sees that stuff that made us so sad and so reluctant to even get out, even go to the grocery store. I caught people looking at me. My eye was one eye. I looked like some kind of TV monster. My one eye wouldn't blink, and it was just horrible, horrible. And she lived through that, but I know that it affected her TV viewing. She was not entertained.
Yeah, I can't imagine that she would have been a fan of this. Let's touch on some other stuff, and then we'll circle back to the heel Jim Ross persona, which is just crazy. It was also crazy that we debuted the Mean Street Posse. With Shane becoming a more regular character, I guess it makes sense. But we're talking about how Shane was a street fighter growing up on the mean streets of Greenwich, Connecticut. Of course, it's Pete Gas and Rodney getting a lot of flack, but these guys are out here wrestling in sweater vests. It was silly, but it worked. It felt like it was out of a movie. What do you think of these characters?
I liked them. I like both guys, and I got to know them. I put some fires out for them with the roster, because guys are just doing the math. You got two more guys coming in. They're going to take two more spots, or at least one spot in tags for sure. And a lot of the talents are jealous and insecure. Duh, a wrestler being insecure? Are you kidding? It happens. I'm being facetious. But they're good guys, and they worked hard. They wanted to be successful. Rodney was the toughest one of the group. He was the guy that did all the heavy lifting when those kids were in high school. He was a hell of a ball player, tough kid, and so was Pete. Pete lives here in Jacksonville, as a matter of fact. And he touches base with me occasionally just to see how I'm doing. We haven't crossed paths here yet, but I'm sure that we will. So it's just two young guys that weren't expensive, that had a great attitude, and they're learning the aptitude and some of the nuances of pro wrestling. So I was in their corner. I thought that, did I like the sweater vest? No, come on. But I like the personality. I like the fact that they wanted to be great. They wanted to contribute. And anybody that's young and affordable, uh, you're on my good list.
Kurt Angle is going to make an appearance on Sunday Night Heat. Tiger Ali Singh is going to be here running down Americans and offer $500 for any American who would blow their nose in the American flag. He points out Angle, calls him a local Pittsburgh hero. Angle says no. Tiger ups it to $2,000. Again, Angle says no. Tiger ups it to $5,000 and Angle says yes. And Angle acts like he's going to do it, but instead, of course, blew his nose in the Indian flag.
Uh-oh.
Angle then gives Singh a belly-to-belly suplex and a judo throw, and the pop was said to have been disappointing for Angle, said to be the reaction of a mid-level face. Now, this is before Kurt Angle is Kurt Angle in WWE, but
he hadn't got over yet.
Right.
It was new, green, the whole 9 yards. So I thought that might have been a little bit of an unfair assessment. It wasn't time for him to get that huge babyface pop.
No,
it wasn't time. He wasn't established. The roots were not buried deep enough that we started to grow something. Because we know that going forward, how great a star Kurt Angle became in WWE. Maybe one of the most honored and respected all-around talents that I ever signed. He just was a natural. I don't remember anybody acquiring. Somebody's telling me this story. It's pretty good about Jack Briscoe turning pro between his junior and senior year of college at Oklahoma State. And the talents loved him. He worked hard. He paid attention. And that matches up with Kurt's entry into the business as well. He was a natural. And guys gravitated to him because he's such a likable character. And he was willing to listen and open up his mind because he realized he didn't know all the answers to pro wrestling yet. He had to get there. So, but I've always had great respect for Kurt. Still do. I don't hear much about him anymore. I know he's making a lot of appearances and things, which are cool. But in any event, I'm a big Kurt Angle fan. Was from the day we signed him. I knew that him being a sportscaster was not going to work. All you had to do is hear his work. That was not what he was called to do. He was called to wrestle, entertain, be physical, be athletic, do all the things that you're blessed with, and see where it takes you. And we did that, and it took him to some interesting highs.
I want to ask you more about this particular segment with Tiger Ali Singh, but I want to sort of sidebar here for a minute. There's been a conversation for the past several months, and boy, it really heated up a few weeks ago again, about Dave Meltzer's star match rating system. And I guess there's a lot of people who are upset at the rating system, and they feel like maybe it's gotten out of hand. The idea being Kurt Angle, one of the all-time greatest professional wrestlers that ever lived, never got a 5-star rating from Dave Meltzer. Meanwhile, there's a lot of modern talent who have a half dozen or more. I'm curious, what do you make of Dave's 5-star rating? Do you think it's overhyped? Do you think it's valid? It has its place? Is it silly that Kurt doesn't have one? Where do you land on that?
I don't land on it with both feet. Quite frankly, I think that certainly Kurt has had, in my view, I think I called a match one time with Kurt and John Cena. I believe I have to go back and do a little research. But he should have had a 5-star match somewhere in his journey, no doubt. Logically, you'd think so.
Yeah.
But I just think it's a Wrestling Observer feature. It's a gimmick. It's Meltzer likes doing those, and he's built some business around it, and so I had no big issues with it. To me, it's all it meant was one guy's opinion is this.
Right.
Call it a day. That's it. not going to make or break anything. It's not going to make it. I'm not going to fire a guy because, well, you haven't got any 5-star matches from Meltzer, so we're going to let you go. It just wasn't.
No.
So it wasn't a huge deal. It wasn't a huge deal.
Let's talk a little bit about this segment with Tiger Ali's thing, though, before we move on. This happens in like March of 1999, and we don't actually see Kurt Angle debut until November. And I'm curious, do you think if Kurt would have not gotten the mid-level face reaction, which is the way Dave described it, and he got this monster pop, do you think they would have fast-tracked him and not been as patient? I mean, I know it worked out for the best the way it happened, but if the reaction would have been over the moon, do you think Vince would have been tempted, hey, let's just get him out there sooner?
Of course. Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. Vince is very astute, and great promoters have a flair, no pun intended, of finding who's hot, who's trending upward. And I think Vince would have probably jumped on that deal. But the mid-card aspect of that was just what it was. I mean, Vince wasn't ready to commit to Kurt, even though he would going forward in a very large and significant way.
Let's talk a little bit about what's next for you here. Quote, Jim Ross came out with a shopping bag and called Michael Cole to the ring. He was mad about being fired. He pulled the red gi and the stupid mask out of the bag and said, this is what the WWF creative team had planned for Steve Williams, who was one of the greatest athletes in the world. Ross said he wanted his job back and kicked Michael Cole low and went to the broadcast position to take over. And this got a huge face pop. Vince then ordered Terry Taylor to replace Cole and take the headsets from Ross. Taylor and Ross argued, but eventually Williams came out and talked Ross into leaving. So Taylor and Lawler did the rest of the show, and the Red Rooster is going to take over on play-by-play the rest of the show. Man, the reaction for you kicking Michael Cole low, that was probably not the original plan. I think they underestimated how beloved good old JR was.
I guess I did. I know that. I didn't have any idea what kind of reaction we were going to get. If you're going to be a heel, as Jim Cornette would say, I'm a goddamn heel, then you hope that you get booed. But that didn't happen. And in the long haul, that was probably one of the best things that happened to me, is that the fans still supported good old JR for whatever reason.
The Ministry is going to bring out Boss Man, and they hang him from the Undertaker symbol. The Undertaker says he's going to take out the corporation one by one until only she will be left, and he'd control her mind. Of course, the idea here is she is, I guess, Stephanie McMahon. But the symbol, the cross, whatever you want to call it, JR, what do you think of
that? Sketchy. I'm not a big fan of some of that stuff. I just find it hard to translate and hard to believe. But I'm glad that Ray Traylor, the big boss fan, got some exposure. Everybody liked Ray. Knew he'd paid his dues. He's deserving of a break, an opportunity, as you may want to refer it. But yeah, I didn't, all that quasi dark religious type stuff was never on my list of things I got to see. So that's how I look at it, Conrad. It got some work, and I got that. But how I might have used a different set of paint to paint that picture. But it was what it was.
The critical moment in the Monday Night Wars, according to Dave Meltzer, is here. Quote, the Monday Night Wars can officially be declared over. The World Wrestling Federation lost a few battles over the nearly 4 years, but now has won the war. The new story is not a competitive rating race, but the incredible success of the World Wrestling Federation coming at the same time as what will likely become over the next few years an almost free fall like destruction of World Championship Wrestling. The WWF set a ratings record with a 5.09 for Sunday Night Heat. Wow.
That's big.
Followed by a 6.46 on Raw the next night selling out both house shows over the weekend, getting more and more merch and publicity appearances from his wrestlers, all leading to a WrestleMania show that will surely be the biggest money event in company history and the biggest non-boxing event in the history of pay-per-view. My goodness. Did you in any way consider the Monday Night War over in March of 99?
Not really, no.
Yeah.
Because they're going to do another show next week, and they might get hot. They might pop a number. They might find a storyline or a pairing of talents that work for them. So no, my schedule, Conrad, was so intense, and I'll make this short. When we got back from TV on Tuesday morning, whatever, it was back to work because I had payroll was due in 48 hours, and that wasn't something just you hit a keystroke and it worked at all. You had to compute it. It was discretionary income. It took thought and preparation and all this stuff. So no, I didn't think it was over. I had work to do, and so we just went about I had a routine. If I had let myself deviate and fade from the routine, I would be making a terrible mistake on my own behalf, and I sure as hell didn't want that.
Let's talk about Luna here for a minute. This is a little bit of bad news. Quote, Luna was let go this past week because of 4 separate incidents where there were problems with other talent and things that were said that made the front office decide it was impossible to keep her. Apparently, the things she said a few weeks ago on Raw about not getting a shot because she's not as pretty as Sable had been bothering her. She had problems in recent weeks backstage with Sable, Mark Mero, Jack Lanza, and Jacqueline. She complained about the angle where Gangrel was hung by the Ministry as a prelude to them joining. She basically challenged Mark Mero to a fight backstage before the Memphis pay-per-view. She blew up at Jacqueline, who she had been friends with in Dayton, claiming that the Jacqueline Ivory match on Heat was them stealing her style of match, whatever that means, and got mad at Lanza that night as well. This led to several of the women being uncomfortable working with her. The plan at one point was for her to win the title from Sable at Mania, although with Sable getting over so huge due to Playboy and the turn, that may have changed. Luna was such a talented lady, the subject of a great Dark Side of the Ring, which they did last season, I believe. But goodness gracious, man, it felt like troubled waters here. Is this just one too many incidents and it was time to go?
Yeah. Luna, God bless her, had some psychological issues. And I don't mean that throwing her on the bus or whatever. She was fragile. She didn't look fragile. She looked like a tank.
Right.
And she was dangerous. The other women were, by and large, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them were leery of working with her because she could hurt you. And so I wish things had worked out better for Luna. I had several instances where she was nice as pie, but you could tell she was always uneasy and uncomfortable. And I got into a situation there where there wasn't a whole hell of a lot I could do about it. I couldn't change her psychological makeup. She was very insecure, and I enjoyed working with her. I felt badly that we had to say goodbye, but we had no other choices. She took the bat out of our hands. We had no other choices, and we tried, but it just wasn't there.
Man, such a talent.
Yeah.
Another guy who's going to be shown the door here, Dan Severn. He's considered done, although he's not gotten technically a contract release. And Meltzer would say there may have been an issue of him making a deal with Inoki before getting the WWF release, particularly since it's such a big money deal. But Severn had a unique contract with the WWF that it enabled him to take outside bookings and shoot fights. I mean, in a different era, perhaps Dan Severn could have had a much bigger run, but in the Attitude Era, probably just wasn't the best fit, right?
No, it wasn't. But Danny was such a credit to be in the locker room. Former, coach and mentor, stable. So I wish that had worked out a little bit better too. We thought we had something there. Of course, I hired Danny Severn to program him and work with Ken Shamrock. And that's kind of the direction we were going to head. It seemed like it made sense. But Dan had trouble in the charisma department. And when you discover that and it's irretrievable, you're pretty much screwed. What do you do now? Our guy didn't have his charisma cup is down there empty. But I love working with Dan. You always knew when you booked Dan, he would be there on time. He'd do his work to the best of his ability, and he always did that. So he's the kind of guy that you really want to have on your roster, because everybody on your roster can't be in the main event.
Right.
So he was always going to be utilized, and I know he helped. He fundamentally speaking, he helped a lot of young talents, because Danny, like I said, was a coach and a teacher, mentor, and a class act. It's just the charisma deficiency bit him on the butt.
Meltzer would say the Jim Ross segments have been doing great quarter hours. Apparently, the original idea was for Ross to be turned heel as a way of getting people to accept Cole as the regular announcer and not seeing him simply as the guy there until Ross gets better. In addition, Ross would be used as a mouthpiece to try and get Steve Williams over. The company expected Ross to turn heel in Cleveland by slapping Bart Gunn, but the reaction was exactly the opposite. So they dropped the plans of making him a heel. Man, this has got to be good news for you. I'm getting good ratings, and I don't have to do this silly heel shit. Sign me up.
Yeah, I like the numbers.
Yeah.
The numbers work for me, and they changed my course, my direction, because we had proof within a reasonable doubt that JR was quote unquote getting over. I thought I was getting over all along, but maybe I wasn't. So, but the heel thing it was just a bad fit. Golly, just a bad fit. People didn't understand it, didn't want to buy into it, and I think when they almost went the other way. Well, we love JR, we're not going to boo him. So hey, okay with me.
You're getting $7.12 ahead at the house show based on merch totals. That's about $338,000 a week. The house shows in Pittsburgh drew 13,497. That's a sellout. In Chicago, it does 18,096, another sellout. In Milwaukee, the very next day is another sellout, 15,950 folks. Man, an ass every 18 inches. That's just what the doctor ordered for some updated paydays, huh?
You ain't lying. Figure out this. Let's say that you're trying to figure out what guys are making. The main event, which would have been Austin, I'm guessing, he got 5 points, meaning he got 5% off the net gross. So that's the gross after taxes. So if that number is 300 grand, he would make 15,000 for that day.
That's a good day.
Not a bad day's work. And he deserved it. He drew the house. No doubt about it. The guy in the main event with him would get about 3%. So Austin made the most money. He got 2 more points than anybody else. But it's the way Vince and I looked at it. He was selling tickets, and it was a good way to keep him happy. One thing you got to figure out is, how do I keep my top talents happy? And with Steve, show me the money. And he loved that aspect of it. So that's kind of the pay structure. So you can tell the guys are making a bunch of cash.
No doubt.
Making a bunch of cash. And that makes it easy to manage in certain ways, and it makes it challenging, because what about next week? What about next month? And guys Austin became more aware of his creative. So it was an interesting time, and I'm glad a lot of guys made enough money in the Attitude Era that if they had saved it, they wouldn't need to work. They're getting big checks. Now that doesn't count the royalties. royalties is another area.
Yeah.
And like I said here before, Austin had a quarter time length where he made $1 million selling T-shirts. So that's a pretty good check to get in the middle of the year. But he earned it. It was all a percentage of what was sold, not a percentage of what was ordered, what went out the door. Show me the receipt, show me the order, whatever. So, and WWE did a real good job of monetizing and keeping up with the I'm trying to think of the word I want to use, but it was a good system. And guys could find out exactly where they were, how many of their shirts they sold. Austin lived and died with that information. He was big because he was designing his own T-shirts. So consequently, he wanted to know what was selling and what wasn't selling, not just for himself, but for anybody else. What style of shirt? What's hot right now? What's trending upward? So but he really invested in that more so than I would say virtually anybody else on the roster.
You said it was a good system. Well, let me tell you about another system. We all dread the old "what should we have for dinner" question. I know I do. And all too inevitably, just order takeout. It's just the easier option in my household, and it's never really satisfying. And I always end up spending too much money on food like that each week. So if you'd rather enjoy a home cooked meal without the stress of planning ahead, man, Home Chef makes it really easy and it saves you money. Home Chef provides fresh ingredients and chef designed recipes conveniently delivered to your doorstep to simplify your cooking experience. Whether you prefer classic meal kits with pre portioned ingredients and easy instructions, speedy recipes ready in less than 30 minutes, oven ready kits with pre chopped ingredients, or quick microwave meals that assemble in minutes, Home Chef has you and the entire family covered for delicious meals without the hassle. Home Chef has over 30 options a week and serves a variety of dietary needs, so you don't have to worry about what to make ahead of time. Not only is it convenient, it's economical too. Home Chef customers save an average of $86 per month on groceries. Home Chef even has a delicious kid-friendly menu with 18 new options each week. It is a picky eater approval here, and it takes all the stress out of dinner time. Now, for a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 18 free meals plus free dessert for life, and of course, free shipping on your first box. Just
Conrad,
go right
did you say free dessert for life?
Yes, sir. Free
Wow.
dessert for life and 18 free meals and free shipping on your first box. Go right now to homechef.com/JR. That's homechef.com/JR. You'll get 18 free meals and free dessert for life. You heard it right, Jim. Homechef.com/JR. Now, you must be an active subscriber to receive the free dessert, but come on, free dessert for life. Come on, Jim. Homechef.com/JR.
I agree. It's a long time. Great deal.
Yes.
It's a great deal. With my diabetes, I'm being very cognizant of my sugar consumption, as one would with this ailment, and so I haven't been on any dessert binges, but it's really easy for me to change. I'm thinking right now peach cobbler or something like that, So
man, they got something for everybody. I
yeah.
encourage you to check it out. My wife loves it. If you got a picky eater in your life, even a picky little rugrat, man, this is for them. Homechef.com/JR. As my pal says, it costs nothing to look. And with 18 free meals and free dessert for life and free shipping on your first box, why wouldn't you just take a look? Homechef.com/JR.
Yeah, give it a try and make an order and see how good how the food tastes. Hey, if the food's not worth the shit and it didn't work, it didn't taste well, then you answer your questions. But if you get order a box and you start sampling some of the options, man, you're in business. That's how you find out. So make yourself an order and see where it takes you. I think you'll be very surprised and happy. These companies like this cannot afford to have average food. Can't do it because it's a whole new setup and a new process. You're not going to the grocery store buying all these ingredients. You're not cooking. I miss my late wife Jan immensely for many things, but one of them is certainly cooking, because she's a little Italian gal from Pittsburgh, so she knew the Italian, and I know in our cookbook, one of the hottest items that we've sold in our cookbook, or not sold, but seen go out the door, is her spaghetti sauce. But it's just a simple thing. But if I tasted it and I didn't like it, then I wouldn't go back to that recipe. I'm done. I'm not going to give it a second chance. I'm hard headed and stubborn. Get off my lawn. So I'm a big fan of trying new recipes and things of that nature. And when you got that all purpose seasoning in your cabinet, you can cook a lot of things really good, really good. So give it a shot. Taste the food. See if you like it. It's not going to break the bank. It's just a really cool way of facilitating your meals where you can control them and eat healthy and do the right thing for your body. So give it a shot, folks. It's a good offer out there right now.
Check it out. I think you'll be glad you did. I want to talk to you a little bit about some MMA here. It's written in the Observer in this era that you had a meeting with Mark Kerr and Mark Coleman. Now, both of these guys have made the news recently because The Rock is about to start filming a movie based on Mark Kerr, who had a fabulous documentary done 25 years ago called The Smashing Machine. And Mark Coleman just made headlines a few weeks ago when his house caught on fire and he saved the family pet, but nearly lost his life doing it. But the word is, in this era, way back in 99, they seem more interested in Kerr since he's got a good look and is very articulate. Although people that have seen and trained with both say Coleman is far more advanced when it comes to pro wrestling. What do you remember of these meetings and why didn't it happen, Jim?
Money. These guys were looking for those big MMA type pay-per-view payoffs, but they wanted it every week. And that was not to be. It just was mathematically a mistake. So, but the money, cash and creative, Conrad, 2 C's. It's generally when something doesn't go through or something doesn't work, it's generally because of cash or creative. Now, for the guys from the MMA world, they were not as versed on creative. Didn't even know how it worked. Didn't know where the ideas came from. Nothing. But they damn sure could count their money, and I just couldn't. We couldn't get the dollar. We couldn't get the big dollars too, big dollars, more than a lot of our regular guys were making, and it just didn't. It just tabulate. But I enjoyed talking to them. I enjoyed meeting with them. Good contacts for us, and but that's the cash and creative reason it's always prevalent.
Let's talk a little bit about Shane McMahon. He's going to be here and beat Patterson and Briscoe, who were dressed up as LOD, which is such a fun visual. The idea is funny. Shane does a nice leap and a drop kick spot with Patterson, and there's some punching, and well, the crowd dies, and it doesn't look awesome. But boy, it sure did look fun at first. I mean, seeing Briscoe and Patterson coming out here dressed up like the Legion of Doom, wearing the shoulder pads and the face paint. Man, I know that maybe it's not a Matt classic, but wrestling every now and again, nothing wrong with a little fun. This was fun for me.
I agree. I enjoyed it because of my deep respect for Jerry Briscoe and Pat Patterson.
Yes.
The fact that they were back at it, they're back in the ring. That's their stage. There's no doubt where the center ring is on a 3-ring circus. It's in that ring. It's in the squared circle. So I was happy that they got some stretch, and they were having fun as hell. And the other thing, they matches like that, and they may be small in content, but they're great to help teach a young green kid like Shane McMahon some of the nuances. And Shane's biggest issue was he tried to work too fast, so you didn't have time for things to register, and that was something that they had to work with him on because Shane's got one gear. He's a intense, high level athlete, and that was a scenario where working with Patterson and Briscoe, couldn't have been any better for Shane. I don't know who we'd have got that had the patience and the commitment that Jerry and Pat had in trying to help Shane. Hey, Conrad, by the way, I got my ports out yesterday.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome, man.
I had 3 of them right in this area. And the main one, it's funny how they pull them out. So I said, well, we'll do this. And the nurse said something along the lines of, well, we can always give you something to deaden it. But deadening it, taking a shot and waiting for it to get better is a bigger deal than just let me pull it out. So I'll do what you think. And there's only one time that it got a little puckering, a little hurt. But boy, I'm sure glad to get those things out. They're just hanging out of my chest, and I've been off my antibiotics, my oral, or is it not oral, but what's the other, intravenous
Yes.
thing. So that was a difference maker for me. So I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad that we finally got the damn ports out. I got 2 or 3 days just to leave it alone and let it heal. But I said this on Twitter. I think it was yesterday, one day this week. It's another step on the road to healing. So that's where we are. It's sore today, but I ain't got to screw with it anymore. So slowly but surely, I'm getting better. As a matter of fact, I think Monday I go back to the surgeon who finally has responded to my messages to evaluate my hip and tell me what he sees. I should have had that information a month ago, but in any event, that's a little medical update. Bottom line, I'm feeling pretty good.
Glad to hear it, man.
Yeah,
Can't wait to see you back behind the microphone.
Yeah, pretty good. Well, it's just still targeting St. Louis.
Love it.
I sure hope that works out, because anybody, I would do just about anything to call Bryan Danielson and Will Ospreay. I think that's going to be, if it's not the match of the year, if it doesn't get 5 stars, I'll be surprised.
I would be surprised too. I mean, just on paper, it's harder to imagine a better clinic than what those guys are going to do.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something that was polar opposite of Bryan Danielson and Will Ospreay. You're going to come out here on Monday Night Raw with Steve Williams, and as the show is going on, you guys start building a new announcers table. I mean, this is fun silliness, but
Yeah.
Meltzer will describe it as Ross came out basically acting like a guy who's gone postal. Look at that. If you're watching with us on YouTube,
I'd like to have that.
Yeah, JR is Raw. That sign should hang behind you right now.
Well, I'll put it back there and we can locate it.
Yeah, I'll text Ben Brown when we finish.
Ben Brown, the what's his title?
Archivist.
Archivist. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Ben's a nice guy.
Great guy.
He'll help you out if he can.
Meltzer would say it's pretty clear here. The idea is to portray Ross as a parody of himself and set up people to accept Cole as the quote unquote real announcer of Raw, and not simply as the guy who's there while everyone awaits for the return. And of course, later the table that you built was broken during the hardcore title match between Billy Gunn and Bob Holly, and that's when you're going to leave ringside. What did you think of this whole me and Doc are going to go out and build a table in front of the other table?
It was silly.
Yeah.
Silly. I understand the concept.
Yeah.
But it was silly. It's like we all agreed on the destination. That was for JR to be a heel and help get Dr. Death over, priority number 1. But it's we're all going to the same destination, Conrad. Here's what I'm trying to say. And on the way to that destination, you have the option to take a variety of routes, a variety of roads to get there. And the only thing that saved my ass, I was miserable creatively. but it was reassuring to see the quarter-hour ratings, because there are a lot of nights on Monday Night Raw where the JR segment was the top-rated segment of the show, and that surprised me pleasantly, but it surprised me.
Well, here's what surprised me. I couldn't believe they did this, but Tiger Ali Singh is out now offering $500, not to blow your nose on the American flag, but to do a Jim Ross impression.
Ugh.
And Meltzer would say, a guy who looked really familiar to me came into the ring and acted like his face was frozen and slurred his words. Ross and Steve Williams came out. Williams suplexed the guy on his head. I think he's still lying in the ring in Bakersfield today. He then gave Singh a doctor bomb, and Ross did an interview, and they immediately cut backstage to McMahon telling White to run them out of the ring. And they really treated the Ross deal like it was a preliminary angle to get White over. Now, of course, the guy who's doing the JR impression we know is Ed Ferrara, and we know he would do this again in WCW and call it Oklahoma. Man, I'm sure Jan had to be upset watching this. Do you think this is Vince just trolling good old JR? I mean, what else can it be?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think he was trolling a little bit, having some fun, flexing his muscle, his corporate muscle, which he had all of. And, obviously he thought it would work. Now, based again on referring back to the quarter hours, it did work.
Yeah.
The numbers were there. But it wasn't fun to do. It just wasn't fun to do. We're going down the wrong road, and it's getting ready to get rocky and unstable. And at some point in time, I just want to be happy with my role. I'm happy with any role because I'm getting paid very well. But it's tough to pull off, to be honest with you. I just didn't feel very comfortable with it at all during those times. And there's a lot of folks that are watching our show today, Conrad, that I'm sure have never even seen it.
Right.
Because of what was that, 99?
Yep.
So golly, you got a lot of time has passed, a lot of water under the old bridge, buddy, to try to remember all the details. But if you're a fan and you're looking just to study, here's how you do a heel, here's how you don't, how you make a heel, here's how you don't, et cetera, et cetera. So, but it was hard times, and psychologically, I pulled it off because I've always said that my ego is too big to not give my best effort. I didn't want to look bad. So I guess I got that from a lot of the boys over the years. I don't see anything wrong with it. You got to be careful you don't make too much of it. And I was careful that I didn't live and die with it. When it was over, it was over. I didn't have any emotional attachment to it whatsoever. I'm glad I did it. I kept my job. I put some more money in the bank, which I like. But was it fun? No, wasn't fun at all.
Well, it was fun signing Trish Stratus, I'm sure. There's a note in the Observer that she's not signed with you, but was told to send a resume to you. When did you first hear about Trish? How was she first coming on your radar? What was your first impression of meeting Trish Stratus?
I think that I got connected and hooked up with Trish through Carl DeMarco.
Okay.
For those that may not know, Carl DeMarco was the quote unquote president of WWE Canada. So we had an office in Toronto, and I think Trish visited the office because she wanted to get in, and then I got pictures of her. I got some video of her playing field hockey, so I could see that she could run. She's athletic, and obviously beautiful woman.
Yeah,
and she's just as nice then as she is now, and she's just wonderful to be around. But the look was, she had that Pamela Anderson look at that time. And so anyway, that was one of my best hires. I know that when it was over and I signed her, she gave me a little replica grill. It's about 4 inches long. It was a prop, a little toy. So she gave me that as a thank you for taking the time to work with her. and I don't regret it whatsoever. I still got that prop, and I still have my friendship with Trish. We communicate, not all the time. She's busy. She's making so many appearances. And I think today, I got 3 appearances booked, so we'll talk about those at some point. Just give you the dates and so forth. So it should work out pretty well.
Well, you know what? I hear that bell in the background. That reminds me that we need to tell you that today's show and all of our shows are brought to you by BlueChew. A little reminder bell for BlueChew. If you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Check it out. Try it. They've been a day one sponsor for us here on Grilling JR. And if you enjoy the show, you enjoy Jim Ross, we think you'll enjoy supporting our sponsor, BlueChew. Boy, it's a game changer. And let me explain. This isn't just for guys who have a problem. Now, if you have a problem, yes, it can help you. This is for guys who want to put on a show. This is for guys who are looking for that 5-star rating, and it won't be subjective. It's going to be a standing ovation. I'm telling you, it's going to make you feel like a kid again. You're absolutely going to love it. You'll find that BlueChew is a unique online service that delivers you the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. So take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And the process is simple, guys. You sign up at BlueChew.com, you consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. And here's the best part. It's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. BlueChew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. But there won't be anything discreet about your package. BlueChew wants to help you have better sex. So discover your options at BlueChew.com. Chew it and do it. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try BlueChew free when you use our promo code JR at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is JR, and you'll receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we want to thank BlueChew for sponsoring today's podcast.
We sure do. Boy, they've been loyal, been with us all along. And you know why, folks? We get results for our advertisers.
Yes.
We take extra time to try to cultivate their products. And on this particular illustration, Conrad and I both are users of BlueChew. So
Yes.
we know that it works. Hell, I think probably most of your staff is probably sold on BlueChew. At least it seems that way.
Absolutely.
They should, if they're smart. If they're not smart enough to do BlueChew, they're not smart enough to work for your company.
Hey, seriously, folks, it's free. We want you to try it. And I think it'll be, as JR would call it, in a reorder situation. Just pay the $5 shipping. It's free. What are you waiting for? Yeah. Go right now, BlueChew.com. Use that promo code JR. Man, March 22nd, as we're sort of home stretching it for the big WrestleMania moment, this is one of the more infamous clips in wrestling history. It's Albany, and it's a beer bath. Austin comes out. He's spraying beer all over The Rock, Vince, and Shane. It's an all-time classic Monday Night Raw, WWE, Stone Cold, Vince McMahon moment. I'm pretty sure you were happy to not be ringside for that one, though, right?
I wasn't.
I mean, I think you're still doing the heel announcer deal, and they got Michael Cole up there.
Maybe. Yeah, I didn't. I wasn't angry or hurt that I missed the beer bath. But it was a good idea, and it was very visual. It was outstanding in that respect.
There's a backstage brawl that only airs for a few seconds. LOD returns and beats up Briscoe and Patterson, of course, after what they did the prior week. Blue Meanie is here to call out Shamrock, but Ryan Shamrock comes out, and he went to Spanker, but Ken came out and beat up the Blue Meanie. Goldust comes out. Shamrock gets him in the ankle lock, but Meanie hits him with the chair. Hey, the Blue Meanie, Brian Heffron, great guy, super nice guy, protege of Al Snow, I suppose, a former staple in ECW. And here he is now in the WWF, just days before WrestleMania is in Philadelphia, his hometown. What can you tell us about the real life Blue Meanie and his venture into the WWF?
Sweetheart of a guy. Got to live his dream of WWE for a while, albeit short, but a sweetheart of a guy, soft-spoken, high IQ, I enjoyed working with Bryant. Just really a super guy.
Agree. Cosign. And if you haven't already, if you're going to be in WrestleMania, if you're going to be in Philadelphia, go to Meanie Mania. He's going to be doing a little tour of the old ECW arena with our pal Roger, who owns the building now. But he's also having a little meet and greet and get together at his favorite watering hole. So check out Blue Meanie on social media and find out all about Meanie Mania. He's your hookup. He's your tour guide for Philadelphia this WrestleMania season.
I love it. Yeah, check it out. Support the Meanie.
Yeah,
You'll be glad that you did. Just meeting him is going to be fun for you.
Great guy. You won't regret it. If you ever see Meanie at a meet and greet or a convention, go out of your way to go over and say hello. You'll make a real connection. He'll probably follow you on social. You guys will be lifelong friends. Today, he and I are going to trade offensive memes back and forth. That's what we do. He's just become one of my better friends. The main event was Steve Austin and Paul White. And looking back, Austin gets the win in just under 10 minutes with a stunner. Now, this is on free TV. This isn't a pay-per-view. It's just on a regular Monday Night Raw or Monday Night Raw. Raw is War. Chat me up about this. Should this have been saved for a big pay-per-view? I mean, I think on some level, a lot of people assumed it could have been those two at WrestleMania, but that's not the case. Instead, it's just a match on free TV.
Well, you're trying to get ratings. You're trying to get people to continue to invest in a product. Did you see that picture? Put that picture back up, Bull. I swear to God, one of the left testicle of Big Show is sneaking out of his tights.
Well, I missed that. I get that off of there. Bull, what are we doing? Come on now. You're getting a little Shivani like in your older age, Mr. Ross. You know, he's a hog watcher. Did you know he's a hog watcher?
What's that mean?
Well, it means he looks at guys' groins a lot.
Really?
Yeah, he even has a song. I'm a hog watcher. I'm a hog watcher. Watching hogs go by. Yeah, that's a real thing. That's what Shivani does.
That's Shivani, my buddy. That's my buddy.
Let's talk about something that I didn't even know about until we started doing research for this. The rumor and innuendo in the Observer is that yourself, Bruce Pritchard, and Rick Bassman were doing a casting call for women bodybuilders, powerlifters, fitness gurus, stunt women, martial arts women. You're trying to start a new show modeled after the old Glow with attractive women and bad wrestling and lots of skits. That's at least the idea that's printed in the Observer. Do you remember this being discussed?
Oh, yeah. Another one of Vince's ideas that he thought we needed to focus on. So it never got off the ground. You know, finding and hiring talent is daunting, to say the very least. And the concept of an all-female show, I mean, I was watching NXT this week, and they have a tremendous amount of content featuring their ladies. So I guess it came to fruition to a certain degree. In as much as even women headlining WrestleMania, which no one would have predicted a generation ago, wouldn't even been on the radar. So anyway, I'm a big believer of equal opportunity. If you're a female and you're on the card in a significant way because you're booked there, I would say that you should be paid in the same ballpark as the men. It shouldn't be a huge discrepancy. So, but that's just me, and I'm not that old fashioned, but I believe that to be true. I believe that in my heart that equal pay. That'd be like saying, well, we're going to play the black guys this and the white guys will get this much more. That don't work. That's just absolutely stupid. It's insane. So the women thing was interesting concept, way before its time.
Yep.
But you know, I'd like to see a list of some of the folks that we auditioned or interviewed. That might be fun to see. Where are they now? Type thing.
The documentary Killer Sally on Netflix. Did you ever see that?
Never did.
Go out of your way to see it. It came out about 15 months ago, but it's a story of Sally McNeil, who was a bodybuilder, and she killed her husband. And when I talked to Bruce when it came out, he called me and he said, "Hey, have you seen this?" And I said, "Absolutely. Megan and I just watched it 2 days ago." And he said, "Dude, we almost hired her. I know that girl." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" I guess it had to be for this, right?
Could be. Yeah, could be.
If you're doing an open casting call for female bodybuilders. So there you go. Check out Killer Sally on Netflix. Apparently, that was almost a thing with the WWF in 1999. Let's talk about the show. We're finally here, WrestleMania 15, back at WrestleMania 14, which was the beginning of the Austin era. We did 730,000 buys. We got 800,000 buys here. So we're trending up. It got 50.2% thumbs up. And before we go any further, I want to ask, were you surprised that Dr. Death is not on this show, that he didn't get a WrestleMania moment?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. Vince just didn't have the confidence in Doc. Doc getting hurt, and all this stuff. It's just, I was trying to do an old friend a favor. I thought if I could get one match out of Dr. Death at Stone Cold, it would draw us big money. I believe that. And we never got there. So no, Doc was, and it didn't surprise me at all. I just didn't. He wasn't there. He wasn't ready for it. And the administration didn't have confidence in him.
Let's talk a little bit about what you wrote in your book, because let's remind everybody, you've been off commentary. It's Michael Cole's job now. You had that bout with Bell's palsy. They tried to turn you heel. And then, as you wrote in your book, you got a phone call. "Hey, pal, make sure you bring your tux to Philly." Vince tells you that a week before WrestleMania 15, the main event is going to be Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. Man, when you hear you're back calling the main event at WrestleMania, how excited are you?
All is right with the world. All is right with the world, Conrad, on that illustration. There's another reason you don't quit. It's another reason you don't give up the fight. It's another reason you don't unsaddle your horse and put it in the barn and call it a career. That's how I look at it. I use every simplistic metaphor I can, but that's kind of where I'm at right now with that. So, yeah, that was a surprise. I didn't ask too many questions. You're not bringing me down there to be an usher because I got a nice suit. So I was happy for the heads up and happy to do any assignment that I was assigned, because I especially that main event. I signed both those guys. They're both friends of mine. They're both valued talents. It was good for me to call their match, for me and for them, because they knew that I was going to have an emotional attachment to their presentation. And I wonder today if announcers still make that emotional attachment to the majority of their matches. I don't know how you could, to be honest with you, but Austin and Rock were different situation. So I'm really, that was I'm sure the next call when I hung the phone up, I called Jan and said, "Hey, look, we're going to Philly." It was a week later. She's got to get close to her. So anyway, I was very blessed to get that call.
You wrote in your book that you were ashamed to have your face be shown. Were you just having, I don't know. I mean, listen, you have a crisis of confidence. Is that the right way to phrase this?
Probably. Close enough. Close enough. Self-conscious, insecure, why me, poor me, blah, blah, blah. So, but when I got to Philadelphia, I wasn't really thinking about my face, because how many times are we on camera anyway? So I made it through, and we told a great story with those two studs. It worked out real well. They were very happy for my work, and they also had a big hand in Vince making that call. They wanted me to call their match, and I took that as a tremendous Attaboy. We appreciate you. Go do this show like you can do it. And that's what we try to do. And it worked out. I thought we had a nice match that night to call.
The main event was nice. The rest, maybe not so much, but
Right.
boy, it is one of the biggest events in wrestling history. Meltzer would write, the biggest show of this and almost any other year was March 28th at the First Union Center in Philadelphia. It drew a sellout of 18,274. Of course, the figure announced on TV was 20,276. But there was 16,756 paying customers. And here's what really jumped off the page to me. Meltzer said all the tickets were gone months ago through advance mailing orders, and none were available to the general public at ticket outlets, paying $1,438,000 and another $274,000 in merch. The live gate would be the largest for a pro wrestling event in North America in 9 years, since the current record-setting $3.45 million house for WrestleMania 6 at the Sky Dome in Toronto, and the third largest ever in the U.S., behind WrestleMania 3 and WrestleMania 5. So, all-time classic, big-time numbers, high fives all around. But the idea that it was all sold through mail order and there were never tickets available to the general public is really amazing, is it not, Jim?
Yeah, it is amazing. I'm not so sure I'm for that. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
You like that uproar that's created when people start buying tickets and they line up. It's just changed so much now. So that's not even an applicable argument. But I like the fact that we can see and feel fans buying tickets. I just think it's great. It's a great shot. It's a great video. But I'm more of a traditionalist, Conrad. Now with all the digital and all this stuff, I don't know how many people have gone to the box office to check out WrestleMania this year, because so much of it has been sold, and and so there's where we are with that. It's just I like the fact that you have interaction with your fans. I like to see the excitement on the fan's face. I like to see a dad holding his little boy's hand and getting hard tickets. Hard tickets are hard to find. It's just the way it is. So anyhow, I'm just a stubborn old bastard.
I love you for that. Let's talk about the dark matches for WrestleMania 15. It's Jacqueline over Ivory in a minute and a half. Not
Why?
good.
Why? 90 seconds. Are you shitting me?
Yeah.
Come on.
Just
both those ladies deserve at least a 5-minute match, bell to bell. They had both been loyal soldiers, to say the least. Miss Jackie especially, she protected and worked with a lot of the other ladies. And then Ivory making quite a nice triumphant return. She contributed to those young talents. I enjoyed managing both those ladies. They're class acts. They're good girls. I follow Miss Jackie on Facebook, and she's out there and about and does things. But and Ivory still lives on that island up in the Pacific Northwest. So good experiences for me, but they deserve more than 90 seconds. Come on.
No doubt. Next up, we've got D'Lo Brown and Test splitting a 20-man battle royal, with the winners getting a tag title shot at WrestleMania. They go 4 minutes and 16 seconds. Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett are on here doing commentary with Deborah there for Eye Candy. Public Enemy, Viscera, Gilbert, Animal, 8-Ball, Skull, Hawk, Scott Taylor, Farouk, Tiger Ali Singh, Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy, Midian, Brian Christopher, Steve Blackman, Bradshaw, The Godfather, and Draws round out the rest of the group. And Meltzer would say the only redeeming quality was that Owen Hart was on commentary. And he says, I'm not sure if it was sarcasm or if he was just so bad, but he was cracking me up when Singh went out and he said, there goes the great Hindu star Tiger Ali Singh, because the line was delivered so out of the 70s. But he was just better when he said fatigue was setting in because these men have been fighting for more than 20 minutes when they weren't even 4 minutes into the match.
That's Owen having fun, man. He's having fun.
And it was great.
Yeah.
The show starts. We get Boys to Men singing America the Beautiful, and then a video piece narrated by Fred Blassie that Meltzer says was probably the single best thing on the show. And that intro from Fred Blassie, that's got to be
Classic.
one of, yes, to this day.
And unforgettable.
Yes.
Classic and unforgettable. So I just do that. David Sahadi, I'm sure, produced those. I'm sure he wrote the copy. He did a lot of great things at WWE back in the day. But you also got to remember he had to produce Freddie. And Freddie came from an era where there weren't scripts. And David was patient enough to work with an aging Freddie Blassie to get what we heard out of him. And it was pretty damn impressive. Pretty impressive. I remember that whole vignette. I saw it before we went on the air, but I love the concept and how it ended up. How was the final edit? What did the final edit look like? And it was, as you just identified, it's outstanding.
Let's talk about the first match. We're finally getting going. It's Bob Holly regaining the hardcore title in a three-way match over Billy Gunn and Al Snow. Crowd's kind of dead for this, but when Al Snow brings out a hockey stick, they start chanting, "Let's go Flyers." It is what it is. We're on to the next one. Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett are going to retain the WWF tag titles, beating Brown and Test in 3 minutes and 58 seconds. It gets a star and a quarter. This is really a backdrop, probably more for the ladies. We're trying to show off Deborah and trying to show off Ivory, and I don't know. Let's move on. Butterbean is here, and this is the thing that I think most people talk about and think about from WrestleMania 15, maybe more than everything else. It's Butterbean versus Bart Gunn. It's a brawl for all shoot match, and it lasts 35 seconds.
Oh,
yeah. This is brutal, man. I mean, to see the way he got knocked out, it's one of the more devastating knockouts I've ever seen in any sort of combat sport, certainly in wrestling. And the allure of Bart Gunn is dead. I mean, he just beat up everybody in the locker room. We've shown everybody he's the best shoot fighter we have. And then we bring in an outsider who doesn't look like a traditional pro wrestler. And bam, down goes Bart like a sack of potatoes in 35 seconds. What's going through your mind when you see Bart go down?
Thank God it's finally over.
Yeah.
Because we had tried so hard, pitched this idea and that idea. Again, I'll probably always have to live with the fact that, I'm sure Bart Gunn still probably believes I had a lot to do with his failure. I had nothing to do with his success or his failure, to be honest about it. So, but I thought we missed the boat on him. We should have. I thought he would have been a good mid-card, semi-main babyface, or a heel, right, put in the right scenario. If he lived in the right neighborhood, so to speak. But it just was a sad time. And like I said, I was glad that it's over, because that was a journey that we all took together. Guys got hurt. We had thousands of dollars in medical bills. It just was horrendous. So thank God it's over.
Well, it was over. The three judges for this were Kevin Rooney, Chuck Wepner, who throw that in your Google machine, the inspiration for the movie Rocky, also a Philly story, and then Gorilla Monsoon. And I think this is going to be Gorilla's first appearance in a while in public after some health problems. He's lost a ton of weight, but got a big show, a big pop. Did you get to spend any time with Gorilla at this show? I know he was still going to Stanford, doing some voiceovers and things like that for international TV, but this is his last WrestleMania.
Anytime I could be around Gino, aka Gorilla Monsoon, Bob Morella, I did. I loved the man. I loved him like family. I think about him all the time. I don't know that there's a full day goes by that I don't think about Gorilla Monsoon. He was that valuable to me. I trusted him. And in pro wrestling, if you hadn't picked up on it, folks, sometimes trust isn't the most prevalent aspect of somebody's relationship. Gorilla, you never had any issues. So I loved him. He was the one that insisted on the leather seats in the rental cars because he could get in and out of them easier. Uh, I took him to the casinos on days that we had delays. Like we can't start till 8 o'clock. That's 5 hours from now. So he said, "Let's go, redneck," and I would drive him to one of the casinos there in that area, and essentially watch him play blackjack all day. But I love the guy, seriously, just like family. That uncle that you just love to be around because of the stories and all this stuff. So, but he lost a lot of weight. You know that I weighed yesterday at Publix has scales out in their lobbies, like these big animal scales. You just step on them.
Yep.
And I weighed 200.
How about that?
Yeah, 200 pounds. When I started this journey, this diabetes stuff, and started taking what you call it, Ozempic or whatever it is.
Ozempic, yeah.
Ozempic. I give myself a shot every night into my stomach. Plenty of territory there, by the way. But I weighed 200 pounds. The lowest I've been since I've been sick was here a while back. I weighed 196 or 197. And yesterday I weighed 200 pounds. I weighed 200 pounds when I was I'll brag on myself, an all conference football lineman in high school. I weighed 200 pounds. So it's interesting. This whole thing's been an interesting journey, but all my vitals are tremendous. And I've lost all this weight. I plan on keeping it off because my diet's changed. There's things I don't even buy anymore. If it's got a lot of sugar in it, over 4 grams, I'm out. So anyway, anytime I could spend an extra 10 minutes or 10 hours with Gorilla Monsoon, I took advantage of it because he was teaching me things every time we got together, teaching me stuff, psychology, this, that, and the other. So anyway, yeah, and I'm glad we did it there. It was kind of local for Gorilla. So, but those that have not met, did not get a chance to meet him or didn't know him through whatever avenues, you missed out on something. He's just a lovable, wonderful man. And I miss him to this very day, seriously.
Well said. Man, what a great man. I can't imagine how much fun he'd be having with wrestling today. Let's talk about the next match. We got Mankind and Paul White. This is a stunt show, if you will. My goodness, I'll never forget the choke slam on the chair. I mean, it's unbelievable. Mankind winds up doing a stretcher job and said to be taken to the hospital afterwards. Just brutal. But Mankind gets the win by DQ. If we were looking to make an impression with Paul White at WrestleMania, I think we did that.
I think so too. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. It worked out well. The violence generally takes your mind off of faulty moves. At least that's my take on it. And they had plenty of contact, plenty of violence. That shot that Bull put up there a minute ago about those 2 chairs.
Yeah.
They're all mangled.
Brutal.
Right there you see, and that's because of Mick Foley's body.
Yes.
And the strength and the power of Big Show. So but I thought we did a nice job with that deal. You didn't want to beat Mick at that point in time. He's too valuable. But we beat him up. And that seemed to get the job done.
We got to mention too, this is the first turn that Paul White has. I know there's become a running joke about how many times he turned between heel and babyface. It felt like it happened over and over and over. Well, this is the first turn. Of course, he debuted as a heel, siding with Vince McMahon. Vince comes out here, starts to berate him, and eventually Paul White picks him up like he's going to go for a choke slam and then lets him down. And then McMahon says, "I'm Vince McMahon and you're a nobody." So finally he slaps him and punches him, leaves him for dead. Patterson and Briscoe help Vince to the back. But now we've got a face Big Show, which I don't know, feels like a little more juice left in the heel rowing, but what do I know? Next up, we got Road Dogg retaining the IC title in a 4-way over Ken Shamrock, Goldust, and Val Venus. What a cast of characters that is. I want to repeat that. This is the Intercontinental title, the same belt that we've seen Shawn Michaels and Razor put on a clinic for at WrestleMania, the same one we saw Piper and Brett put on a clinic for at WrestleMania, the same one we saw Savage and Steamboat put on a clinic for at WrestleMania, and now we've got Road Dogg, a sports entertainer, Goldust, Val Venus, and Ken Shamrock. Wrestling's changing in the World Wrestling Federation. Fair to say?
Oh yeah, absolutely. A lot more sizzle than steak sometimes, and that's the functionality of booking. They wanted more entertaining content. They didn't mind that their heels were getting cheered at that certain time, and the boys didn't do a lot of. They had the boys themselves contributed to that. They thought the more cheers they got, the more T-shirts they're going to sell, the more money they're going to make. And maybe there's something to that. Hell, I don't know. But all four of those guys, we knew when we booked that match, if we needed time, yay or nay, positive or negative, we could get it out of those guys. A lot of talent in that match. Good workers.
Yeah, no doubt. Super talented, but it does feel like maybe miscast because a couple weeks prior to this, we had Bart Gunn, or I'm sorry, Billy Gunn as the in the Intercontinental Championship hunt, and Road Dogg was the hardcore title holder. It felt like we didn't need to switch, but we did. Next up, we've got Kane and Triple H. Before the match, as you might imagine, the San Diego Chicken is trying to attack Kane. Of course, it's Pete Rose in disguise. He's going to get tombstoned by Kane for the second WrestleMania in a row. This became a running gag. I loved Pete Rose showing up here with Kane. It was always fun. The match itself was just kind of there for me. But the crowd does pop big to see Triple H and Chyna back together. I guess that's what we were looking for, or to reunite them. Maybe it's more of a backdrop here to that, but we're really setting the stage for what's going to come a little later. We got Sable and Tori, who are going to go 5 minutes and 6 seconds, and Meltzer said it was absolutely the worst match of the year. The bodysuit that Tori had was pretty memorable. It's airbrushed to make it look like she's not wearing any clothes at all. Meltzer would say they're blowing every spot and couldn't work together at all. People at ringside could loudly hear Sable complaining in the ring that Tori was hurting her and being too stiff. It got -2 stars. I know Sable's a big star. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about Tori. What can you tell us about Tori? And by the way, we're not talking about Tori Wilson. We're talking about Terry Power from back in the day.
All right.
Chat me up about Tori and her run in the WWF.
She contributed a lot. Good hand. She was one of those experienced females that could work with any of the other females. She kept herself in great shape. She had a lot of sex appeal, a lot of athleticism. So I thought she always contributed well. She garnered some extra opportunities because she and her boyfriend lived on a house on a boat, and they had it parked in the harbor there in Stanford. So she was around the office and the gym and et cetera, et cetera. Or if the creative had an idea that they need to use, well, they could reach out easy and get her because she was local. Hop in a car, go sit in the car after her and go do your business. But she was I thought, a valuable asset and contributed significantly to the success of the program and the other women. She worked so long in Japan, and where it was in that era very, very, not that it's not now, but very stiff, very snug. And so she had some issues with her shoulder. I think that's what ended up creating her exit. She just couldn't hold up. So I think she went back to Portland. I think she's from Portland. But a real nice lady, real good athlete. But she too had been in the business long enough to understand what insecurities felt like, booking wise. So there's always that issue. And because she lived locally, she could find her way into my office pretty much any time because we didn't have to fly her in. So, but I'm glad that we got her under contract. She looked great, solid in the ring, good hand. I thought she had a nice package there with Kane too, at certain for a while. But she was an asset, Conrad. She just she was kind of put together, reassembled, and that's hard when you have joints that are issues like her shoulder was.
Nicole Bass is going to make her debut at the end of this match. Meltzer would say that she hit the ring about 30 seconds early. She's going to press Tori and drop her. That leads to Sable with the Sable bomb. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about Nicole Bass. Any memories of signing her or spending time with her?
She was a star at the autograph sessions. She couldn't work. She just wasn't very good. She had no aptitude for the business. Was she in good shape? Of course, she was a bodybuilder.
Yes.
She always looked good, but she didn't have it. She had Howard Stern's background or backup exposure, et cetera, et cetera. She had a very unique look, but again, aptitude. She had no natural aptitude in pro wrestling. And on that level, a WWE level, if you don't have that, you're probably not going to make it.
Next up, we've got Shane McMahon pinning X-Pac to retain the European title in 8 minutes and 41 seconds. Patterson and Briscoe are going to try to attack X-Pac before the match, and you know what happens to them. Test comes out with Shane to offer a little smoke and mirrors. They focus on the Mean Street Posse. Yeah. It's interesting. Shane misses a Bronco Buster on X-Pac. He lays out Test, and now out comes Triple H and Chyna. And after X-Pac uses the X Factor on Shane, Triple H runs in, and while Chyna has the referee distracted, Triple H gives X-Pac the pedigree, and that allows Shane to win and keep the title. The Outlaws come out, but Triple H and Test were laying them out until Kane's music plays and everyone's scattered. I can't believe this is real, but this is sort of the end of DX. And these guys were one of the top drawing acts, huge pops, huge reactions, huge merch sellers. And now it's time to move on. Is this Hunter's request? Do you think Hunter was ready to break out of the pact and not be a part of a faction?
His booking skills and his aptitude for booking came to the front there. I think he felt like that he had accomplished about all he could in that DX thing there. They were hot. They got hot, and he jumped off that lightning bolt while it was still burning. And that's never a bad thing. You can get out too early and leave money on the ground, but I don't think that was the case here. Because you had your A team together, Triple H and Chyna. So that was money. So I think that's what the issue was. Is just Triple H probably talked to Vince and said, "Hey, look, we've done about all we can with this thing, but with Chyna and Joni and I, we can reinvent the wheel." And he was right in a lot of ways.
We should also talk about Shane McMahon. Boy, Dave Meltzer just heaped the praise on, saying he blew everyone away with being a first timer, with the possible exception of Kevin Green and Lawrence Taylor. He was probably the best first timer, way ahead of Eric Bischoff and David Flair and other folks. So people were impressed and said, Meltzer even said he probably had the second best match on the show, which is really saying something for you to be a quote unquote first timer like this.
Yeah. Good accomplishment, no doubt. But it was not totally surprising, but to the level that Shane ascended to in that match did surprise a lot of us. He performed better than expected, and so I think most people that saw it would probably agree with that.
Let's talk about the real stinker of the show. It's Undertaker and Big Boss Man in a Hell in a Cell. On the one hand, everybody gets excited about seeing a Hell in a Cell. On another hand, boy, this just ain't it. It's less than ideal. They hang the Boss Man. They act like he passed out. They go to a video feature and they never say anything about it again. Meltzer compared it to a Roadrunner cartoon. I mean, we're hanging a guy, Jim. And
I noticed that, Conrad.
what are we doing?
We're reaching for straws. We're grabbing things that aren't there.
Yeah.
Trying to create something out of nothing. And, look, without all that hokey pokey and all that hocus pocus and all that stuff, there's no doubt in my mind that Big Boss Man, a.k.a. Ray Traylor, and The Undertaker would not have had a great match. They liked each other. They paired up well. Boss Man at one time was a hell of a heel. He was big enough, strong enough that he could impact the armor, if you will, of Undertaker. But they went the other route. They started going smoke and mirror type things, and that was, I understood why. You try to give the match every advantage that you can to get over, but it didn't work. It didn't get over, and that's too bad. Undertaker deserved better, and so did Ray Traylor, quite frankly. But they're following the orders of the head man, and sometimes those orders are ill-fated. It's like anybody else. Anybody can make a mistake in that respect.
I know it's on pay-per-view, but man, we got kids here. It's weird. It's less than ideal. I don't love it. Less said about it, the best, I suppose. Let's talk about what you wrote in your book, though, because it's time for our main event. And you wrote, I could feel the energy from the crowd, and it immediately raised my confidence a little. Don't worry if they boo you, a stagehand said from the darkness. I stopped immediately. What? You think they'll boo me? Maybe, he said. This is the city that booed Santa Claus, after all. Have fun out there. I peeked through the curtain at the raucous crowd in the arena. Well, fuck, I whispered to myself as I walked out there to face the world again. As I walked down the aisle, the raucous Philly fans gave me a standing ovation. I tipped my hat to Michael Cole as I walked past him on the way to the announce table. Folks reached out to high-five me, and the whole arena was cheering. They didn't care how I looked. They were just happy to see me. And boy, was I happy to see them. When you take a look at the totality of your career, returning after Bell's palsy like this to sit down and call the main event at WrestleMania, this has to be a top 10 moment in your career, no?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. King was happy. I want to keep the King happy, and we did. Because we had such a comfort level of working together. That was kind of cool. But I had no idea how the crowd was going to react, and that stagehand or floor director, or producer, whatever, whoever it was back there, said, "Don't worry about it if they boo you." And I didn't know how to take that. I hadn't even thought about it to that degree, and I got no time to reflect.
Right.
Let's go to work. They're going to play your music here in about 30 seconds. And so they did, and the crowd cheered. They cheered loudly, and they were glad to see OJR back. And as I said in our book, it was a a situation where I was happy they did it, and they seemed to enjoy the seeing the fat guy from Oklahoma.
Steve Austin is going to regain the WWF title from The Rock in 16 minutes and 52 seconds of the main event. And fans are thankfully just able to forget about this little Postal JR moment. And Shawn Michaels comes out to stop Vince McMahon because Vince was thinking he was going to referee. And Shawn comes out and says, no, the corporation is banned. Get out of here. Mike Chioda, you're the referee. The guys are brawling and working hard, and Meltzer would heap the praise on Austin, saying he's taken some nasty bumps in particular, and you have to give him credit for working as hard as he does when he doesn't have to. But I guess that's really what The Rock was what Austin was really all about. We got some ref bumps and some shenanigans, and Earl Hebner is going to be here, and Mankind is going to come down and deck Vince. Austin does a schoolboy. There's a rock bottom. Austin blocks it, hits a stunner. That's the pin. And after the match, Earl Hebner, who seemed way more excited about Austin winning the title, drank beer in the ring with Austin. Austin then decked Vince after the match and delivered another stunner and poured beer on him to end the show. Meltzer would say it was a really good main event, not at the level of heat of their last Raw match or even the match in San Jose 2 weeks prior, but a good main event. And man, if we're sending fans home happy and Stone Cold's drinking beer and he's the champ, all is right with the world here in 99. No?
I think so. Let's don't overthink it.
Yes.
Just don't overthink it. They're on their feet. They're cheering. Your hero's drinking his traditional beer. He's denigrating the owner, the evil owner again. So the question there could have been, how much longer can Vince and Stone Cold have their issue?
Right.
Well, they could extend it, and they did, and it worked out. It was a good story that kept evolving, and that's money. And it was money.
We should also mention that there was a snafu that maybe not everybody caught. And I don't think, I mean, when this card was announced and you knew, okay, Rock's champ and he's going to be wrestling Stone Cold. Stone Cold's the hottest wrestler in the entire world, maybe in the history of the world at that point.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's a surprise, but still, Michael Cole would say when he's just before the match starts that after our show tonight, turn on the Home Shopping Network where the new WWF champion will appear. So it's a little bit of a spoiler, but whatever.
What were we thinking? Pay attention. That's just, he got directed to what to say.
Yes.
And in hindsight, he shouldn't have said it. Hey,
right.
I sat there on those headsets where Vince would tell me to say something and I would refuse. And then he would come on the headset during a video package or commercial break or whatever and want to know if I heard him. And I said, yes, I did hear you. But before the show, you said to not go there. And here's why you said it. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. So he said, well, you did good by not saying it. I don't even know what it was. It wasn't that big a deal. But a guy's got a right to change his mind or to make a mistake. And I knew that the mistake would be made if I opened my mouth and said what he instructed me to say, because he just told me an hour and a half ago or 2 hours, don't go there. And I remembered that. I remember my instructions. So I didn't go there. So that's kind of where that was. But I thought that was a good show. I thought the pay-per-views are driven, Conrad, by the main event talent.
Yes.
And the main event talent in this show, Steve and Rock, delivered. And they delivered in a big, big way. I don't know that we could have had it any better because their chemistry was so grand, and they're so talented, so athletic, and maybe more than anything, so motivated. So I always loved that marriage. That's why the guys got 3 WrestleMania main events, one-on-ones. And when's the last time that's happened?
Right.
I can't remember. Maybe there's been somewhere isolated. There's been somebody that had multiple single main events in WrestleMania, but I can't think of what they would be off the top of my head.
We got to do a few questions here, and then we'll put a bow on this one. I personally wasn't a fan of the heel turn because I love JR so much. I like Austin's heel turn. It just felt unnatural. In your opinion, what is the key to a great heel turn? When and why should it be done? And are those who should never turn heel because it's just too unbelievable? So do you think go ahead.
I think so. That last sentence, yeah, I think so. I think there's a time and a place, so to speak. It's all judgment calls. It's not an exact science. Austin being a heel was inevitable. He, like you said earlier, he was the most over guy in wrestling globally. Maybe the most over guy that the business has ever seen. As far as JR is concerned, it was just bad booking. It didn't make any sense. But we wrote it out as best we could and played out our role. I did what I was told to do because I was accepting the man's money. And my old man would have freaked out if he knew how much money I was making and that I was having trouble with my role. You got to be shitting me. So that's how I look at that thing, Conrad. I broke it down to basic stuff, and I'm glad that it did. So there's no hard science in turning somebody heel. It's generally best when you turn somebody heel that they're already over, not that they're getting over. And so but there's a lot of, it's a feel thing more than anything, I believe.
Let's talk about Chico 1680. He has a great question here. He wants to know, was there heat in 99 between Russo and JR? I'm trying to figure out how anyone could think a heel JR would have worked when he's coming off a serious stroke following his mother's passing, and the fact that Michael Cole was not popular with the WWF audience during that period of time.
Oh, a little bit of philosophical differences between Russo and I. I don't want to fall in that Cornette camp that deeply, but philosophically, Vince and I had our differences of opinion. I'm glad that over the years, all that stuff's been laid to rest, because it's the same thing with Ed Ferrara. Not over time, Ed and I have spoken and talked through this thing. He didn't like doing that gimmick a lot either. But again, we had marching orders. You're put into a school play. Here's your role. Learn your lines. It's really kind of that simple, and hopefully you'll be able to execute, pull it off.
Tom wants to know, was the Hell in a Cell at WrestleMania 15 so bad because of unrealistic expectations? Jim, I think that's a fair question. I mean, the bar was set so high with Hell in a Cells in the past. Could it ever live up?
No, not to the previous Hell in a Cell matches. I mean, how do you compare that Hell in a Cell match to something like Taker and Shawn, for example? You can't do it. You don't have the horsepower. So, yeah, I thought that WrestleMania 15 or the Hell in a Cell was just under-delivered. And I felt bad for Taker, as I said earlier. He deserved better. And we just missed the mark there. We gave too much expectation. We thought that between the two of them and the toys around the ring, et cetera, that everything would be cool, and it wasn't. They just couldn't live up to the hype.
Well, we're going to see if this year's WrestleMania can live up to the hype. It is just days away, and we'll be back next week talking more WrestleMania. This time it'll be WrestleMania 25 from Houston, Texas. Arguably the greatest WrestleMania match of all time with Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. My goodness. Right. What a match that was. We'll talk about all that, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we want your questions. Drop your questions on the community page over at grillingjr.com. That's where you can find us. All of our archives are there. If you haven't already, it's our YouTube. Go hit the subscribe button. It's free. And turn on the notifications bell. When we go live in 2024, you're going to know all about it. You'll get a notification on your phone. And we want you to be there. Join us. Grillingjr.com is where you can ask questions about WrestleMania 25 or any other question. That's where we're going to be running our polls for topics and things like that. So if you haven't already, check it out, grillingjr.com. Also want to encourage you to check out jrsbbq.com. There's something for everybody over there. We got the main event mustard, the Chipotle ketchup, not one, but two types of barbecue sauce, maybe the new hottest item, JR's Red Ass Hot Sauce, the all-purpose seasoning, which is my favorite. But you've also got things like collectibles, action figures, cards, and so much more. And as JR says, it costs nothing to look.
Not a damn thing, folks. Not a damn thing. Just check it out. And we never close. The store's always open for you guys.
Check it out. It's jrsbbq.com. We've also got some other new swag like shirts and shot glasses and everything else at grillingjrtees.com. And Jim, I never know what to expect when we sit down and click record. I'm glad to hear that your ports are out. I'm glad to hear you're feeling better. And I'm glad that we got one WrestleMania under our belt, one more next week, and then the real thing next weekend. And I got my fingers crossed. We're about 3 weeks away, I think, from hopefully, knock on wood, you being back behind the microphone in St. Louis for Bryan Danielson. And what a match that could be, man. Danielson and Ospreay.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Physically, I'm going to feel fine. I just got to adjust my travel and a little bit, take precautions, be smart. I still have trouble putting my socks on. My housekeeper comes when I go out of town. This is a crazy story. When I go out of town, my housekeeper will come over before I get picked up to go to the airport, and she will help me put my socks on because I can't on my right leg because of the hip. I can't bend it enough to get the socks on. Simple, small little thing, but it's a pain in the ass. So, and here this week, I've been better off putting my pants on than I have in the previous weeks. So it's a growing process. It's very frustrating. It is painful, but I got to go through that to get to where I want to go. So it's all good. But jrsbbq.com has got some great ideas. Stephen Link does a real good job there picking out specials and offers that we think you will like. So go check us out. And did Will get those lists of those appearances?
Absolutely. And we know that you're going to be making a few of those appearances. June 8th in Jacksonville, Florida, River City Wrestling Con. You'll be able to meet JR there. And July 6th, what about Battleground Championship Wrestling right there in Philadelphia? And don't forget WrestleCade Weekend 2024, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, November 30th. I can't believe that you're going to be on the road that weekend, Jim. That's always rivalry week in college football. Jim's sacrificing to come see you. So come see him June 8th in Jacksonville, July 6th in Philadelphia, and November 30th in Winston-Salem. Man, you're going to have the books out by then and doing some pictures and autographs, meet and greets. It's going to be a good time.
Sign some books. And at these meet and greets, I personalize them. So if Conrad comes up, wants to buy a book, and that book, it'll say to Conrad in some shape, form, or fashion. But I love doing that, and I love signing books that people have already bought because then I can ask them what they liked about it or what sticks in their mind. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be, and we'll fill in a lot of dates around those. Those are just 3 appearances that came in here recently, and off we go.
Off we go indeed. And we'll be back next week. Make plans to join us here on Grilling JR. And if you haven't already, if you're in the St. Louis area or within driving distance, pick up your tickets now at AEWTIX.com. Come see Jim do what he does best. Knock on wood, April 21st in St. Louis. AEWTIX.com, and we'll see you guys right here next week on Grilling JR with the voice of professional wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross.
Indeed, Conrad. Thank you very much, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Next time, bring a friend with you, and we'll see you right here next week on Grilling JR, the hottest podcast going. We appreciate you guys for making that happen.
Tax season is here, which means you've received or are expecting that tax refund any day now, and you're thinking about what to spend it on. How about a new home? With SaveWithConrad.com, we're helping renters become homeowners every single day, and it's more affordable than you think. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need a huge down payment. In fact, you may not need a down payment at all. At SaveWithConrad.com, we take the stress out of the home buying process. We'll determine your buying power. We'll even help you find a realtor. And unlike the banks, we don't say no. We say not yet, but here's how. So if you're not ready right now, we'll get you on a plan to be ready. Stop throwing your money away, paying someone else's mortgage with your rent, and start the path towards owning your own home today at SaveWithConrad.com. NMLS number 32416, equal housing lender. SaveWithConrad.com.